Good morning, guys. Welcome to the session. So we are doing a session on how to study data interpretation. This is something that is very crucial for all of you to understand because, as you know, interpretation is one of the most critical areas of your uh, CAT prep. And one of the things that I have noticed is that across my training experiences over the past 2, 3 decades, what I've noticed is that people have a tendency to underdo their DI. So what happens is I mean, you are involved in quants and quants. There is a lot of triggers to prepare quants because of the fact that you have to cover so many chapters and you have got decent clarity about what to do there. And then verbal RC also, you start doing your reading and you start doing your vocabulary and you start doing a little bit of solving. And in this this thing in this uh, context of getting stuck in these tasks, you have a tendency of leaving out the DILR preparation. What you need to remember first off is that the CAD has 3 sections: VRC, DILR, and quants. The CAD has 3 sections. And if the CAD has 3 sections, when you go into the exam, for these 40 minutes that you're going to be spending in this exam, for these 40 minutes, the only thing that will come to your rescue or that will come to your help is the prep cycle of what you did on your DILR preparation. Those 40 minutes, your quants preparation is not going to come and help you here. This is not going to happen. Your verbal RC preparation is not going to happen. It's not going to help you. So if you're going to spend 40 minutes in the exam on DILR, you better start preparing for it. So one of the mistakes people make, which I want you to avoid, is that they because they ignore data interpretation LR and only start it pretty late. The problem that happens is if they have this cycle, this timeline for their quants preparation, and this timeline for the VRC preparation, their timeline for DILR is only this. And I don't think I need to tell you that whatever, if you have a 25-week timeline for quants and you have a 25-week timeline for verbal RC on which you have prepared, and you have a 12-week timeline of preparation on DILR, if you do that, these 40 minutes are going to come back to bite you. Now, the other factor is that data interpretation. Now, today's session is mostly about data interpretation because I have a very strong belief that you have to treat DI and LR as 2 separate subjects. You cannot think of them as one subject because the key aspect in a DI question is different. Although there is a lot of merging nowadays, especially between DI and LR. But you need to understand that the key aspects of a DI question are different from the key aspects of a LR question, right? So I'll come to that. So you have to treat both these as separate subjects, and hence your preparation for your DI-LR has to be on 2 tracks. One is what you're doing for your DI, and the other is what you're doing for your LR. Of course, in the CAT nowadays, you get mixed sets on DI-LR, which can be sometimes viewed from a DI perspective or an LR perspective. But the way these sets go is that you have built your DI skills from the bottom. You have built your LR skills from the bottom. The steps required to solve these sets, let's say it requires 12 steps to solve or 10 steps to solve this question. What happens is you pick up a step that you learned in DI at the basic level. You pick up another step that you learned in DI at a slightly intermediate level. Then you pick up a step that you learned in LR at a basic level, and then you'll pick up a step that you learned in DI at an advanced level. So your solving of this seamlessly merges the the skills that you generated or you built in your data interpretation preparation and your LR preparation. And during the solving, you'll not even realize कि ये वाला step DI से आ रहा है कि LR से आ रहा है, because you will not remember those things. You'll just be reacting and you'll just finish it off. In hindsight, when you analyze, you can work out, but while solving, you'll not even realize. So so this is one of the reasons. I mean, and this is how you actually plan your preparation. And so I'm going to give you, given the fact we are in 11th May, I'm going to give you a perspective, or even if you are watching this video somewhere plus or minus, going to give you a 6 month perspective, 6 months, 26 to 28 weeks perspective on how to do your DI today, right? So data interpretation is mostly about, I mean, when you talk about data interpretation is about data. And you need to understand that when you have data is in the form of facts or figures or numbers, mostly numbers. When you interpret data when interpreted, it gives you information. Right? So every question, so what a DI set does is that it gives you some data in the form of charts, graphs, text, tables, and then it from this data, there is some natural information that is flowing out that can be extracted from this data. The questions on the set will ask you, let's say this is a set of 5 questions. These will ask you specific information that is coming out from this data it'll ask you to find out and give the answer. Right? So when you interpret this data, you get this information. The questions will seek this information. Question seeks information that is extractable from this piece of data. Sometimes, of course, a question seeks information which is not extractable, in which case the answer becomes data inadequate. So this is the basics, the basic in data interpretation. And so the keys and in data interpretation is the ability to read data. Now, this part, I mean, in the form of charts, graphs, text, or tables, the ability to read data is the first and foremost prerequisite. Now, this part is, I mean, of course, uh, at your level, at the graduate level, you really do not need much help in understanding how to read a pie chart or a bar chart, right? So if you go into the structure of my book currently, the first part of the book is split into multiple chapters. So it is split into chapters like tables, bars, pie, right? And then you got XY and line graphs. So these are the various representations in of data. So because and in this, inside this, there are level 1, level 2, and level 3 exercises. So what I want you to do when you start preparing is when your first preparation point is and these chapters inside the book. And
Okay. Your first preparation point is the
Yeah, so the first preparation point is the book and what is and these topics. Now, in these topics, what I want you to do is I want you to first uh, and please understand there's no theory in data, unlike quants where every chapter you have to do the theory and the basics. यहाँ पे कोई basics नहीं. So your learning in data interpretation is only through question exposure. There's no other learning process. Pick up a question, you get exposed to it, you learn how to solve it, and then after some time, you start realizing that things in data interpretation start getting repetitive in nature. So question exposure, so you straight away head into the LOD1 and LOD2 questions. Now, LOD1 and LOD2 questions are mostly traditional DI based. Now, I'll just talk about how to split your preparations. So in that context, LOD3 is logical DI based. So when you're starting off your preparation, I really do not want you to get into LOD3 because you might not be able to solve most of it and you'll get frustrated. Your first focus is to get through the LOD1 and LOD2 exercises of these chapters. And since I've talked about traditional DI and logical DI, a traditional DI set is basically built on static data. So, and there might be mild logic in it. Sometimes there'll definitely be some logic in it, but the logic is mild. So essentially, in a traditional DI question, you're given the graphs and the charts in front of you, and the information that you bring by interpreting these graphs and charts. By interpreting these graphs and charts, the information you bring up is mostly built around data extraction, data reading and extraction. Mostly built around data reading and extraction. So your process of solving a traditional DI question is when you look at the question that is being asked, you first read the data, understand the information, understand the data. And then when you look at the question, you read the first question, you see what it is asking. So let's say, and mostly the other aspect which a traditional DI question is built on is calculations. So, of course, please remember, the CAT has not created any such distinction that this is traditional DI or logical DI. But this is a distinction which I have, as a trainer, I have realized that when logic becomes intense, and analysis become intense, the skills required to solve the same question, the question set is very different to the skills required when the data is static and the logic is mild, right? So your first focus is your focus in these questions is data reading, extraction based on the information sort. So the information sort might give you a formula, or from the information sort, you might be able to work out a formula that I want to find out this into this minus this divided by this plus this. So then you have to work out, okay, where is this information? Where is this number going to come from? So this number is going to come from the charts and graphs given. You go to the charts and graphs and then extract this number. You go to the charts and graph, you extract this number. You go to the charts and you extract these two numbers. And then you calculate. So this is what a traditional DI question is all about. So the skills required for traditional DI. Now, one more thing before we move on. What you need to understand also is because all this, the complete, your DA data interpretation is about data reading and data. So what happens is that at the heart of every DI question, the heart of every DI question is built on variables. And their relationships. Every DI question, whatever question you see, the heart of every DI question is built on variables and their relationships. So when I talk about data reading, the key skill involved in data reading is to be able to identify this. And not only identify those, so variables like in a maths question, variables are of two types, the given and the hidden. So there'll be some variables which are given straight in your face, which you read and you realize. And there'll be some variables which are not given directly. So you have to be able to understand that this can be extracted. So for example, if I give you the sales of a company, sales revenue of a company, and I give you cost of the company as two variables, you realize that the relationship between these gives me the profit or loss. I can extract the profit and loss. So even if I do not tell you profit loss in the set, you have to be able to see that the relationship between these two is only sales minus cost gives you profit loss. On the other hand, there could be other variables also which are hidden inside this, where you say divide sales revenue by cost. If you divide sales revenue by cost, you get sales per rupee spent. So these kind of variables start emerging from two variables which are given. So that's why you have to be, when you see the variables, when you identify the given variables in the question, the hidden variables are something that you should be able to understand automatically. And this is where the quants part of DI comes in. The use of quants comes into DI. Right. So this is the basic structure. So you identify the variables, you understand their relationships. Through the relationships, you understand which new variables are emerging. And from there, the next skill is to understand the language of the question. What does it say? And from the language of the question, you then come to the formula. You extract the formula. This is what I'm looking for. And from the formula, then you solve the formula, or you insert the numbers, you extract the data, and then you calculate. So this is the traditional DI question mostly. So I'm going to clear this now. So what so this is what your traditional DI question is. Now, a small word about language. So if I list down variable spotting the variables that are being talked about, variable perception, perceiving the variables which are coming out of this data, which is not given explicitly. So this is for the hidden variables. This is for the given variables. Variable relationships. What are the relationships that make sense between V1 and V2? Is it plus, minus, into, or divided? Only these four will work, right? Variable relationships. Language comprehension, question language comprehension. And finally, data extraction. And calculations. We have the 6 step or 6 dimensions or 6 key skills that headline traditional data interpretation. A bit about language comprehension. In DI, the language sometimes becomes very complex. The reason for that is because if I tell you, let's say I talk about two numbers and I ask you the difference between these two numbers. I want to ask you the difference between these two numbers. So you know that the difference formula is this. So in a maths question, I might have a question that find the difference between A's salary and B's salary. So what is the difference between A's age and B's age? So I'm using two words to describe this number and two words to describe this number. That's it. Just four words, I'm describing everything. Right? And your reading is simple because of that. In data interpretation, what happens? Suppose I have a pie chart. And this pie chart is talking about India's exports. And I want to find the difference between this number and let's say a second pie chart where I want to find out the difference between this and this. So I have to describe this number to you and I have to describe this number to you and I'll say, what is the difference between number one and number two? Right? Now, the description of number one, let's say this is India's exports in 2023-24, and this is India's exports in 2024-25. And let's say this is India's exports of manufactured synthetic items. So describe N1 completely. What all will I have to say? To describe N1 completely, what all will I have to say? I'll have to say language which reads like this, just for description of N1. I'll have to pinpoint that I'm talking about India's exports. I'll have to pinpoint the year, India's exports in 2023-24. So what is the difference between India's exports in 2023-24 of manufactured synthetic items? So you see there are 10 to 15 words just here, just to describe this. और उसके बाद ये and आएगा. Before I tell you the second name or the second number, I create the reference of the second number. So what will happen is this word, because this is 15 words, this is 15 words. Sometimes I've seen even 20, 25 words description for one number because that the data is structured in such a way that justifies it. So you will have, instead of a 5-word question, in maths, this is difference between N1 and N2. In DI, this is also difference between N1 and N2. So the formula is same. N1 minus N2 and the modulus of that. But to read this, to understand this is what they're asking me, to understand that part, you have to process the fact what is N1. Right? And you will have to process 50 words, 50 word sentences to do this. So that's why the question language comprehension, understanding how question is structured, and the key skill inside this is to understand the key differentiators. So typically what happens, this is all quantitative language. When I say difference between N1 and N2, this is essentially quantitative language, right? So key difference or the key understanding or the key focus when we talk about question language comprehension. When we talk about question language comprehension, the key focus is to ensure that you understand the quantitative structure of how something like that is written. So for example, whenever I write the statement, what is the difference between? Now, whenever I write this sentence, I will have to give you two words, two numbers. Can I give you a question like this? What is the difference between A's age and stop the question? No, of course not. Right? So, and inside this, when I give you number one and number two, there was a differentiator, the key differentiator between number one and number two. The natural key differentiator between number one and number two is the and. Right? So similarly, if I make a, so you'll have to spot that and. So in A's age versus B's age, the and is very clearly visible. It's very natural. But if N1 is described in 25 words and N2 is described in 25 words, and you miss the and, you'll get completely lost in the language. So this is what I've seen a lot of people having a problem with DI to start with. So what you need to work on and what you need to familiarize yourself on, this will automatically happen as you start practicing. You don't need to do anything specific for it, but you can also correlate it to your cons prep with respect to what you're doing there. So what you need to get better at is you need to get better at or improve your recognition of typical cons language. Suppose I want to tell you that there are two numbers, N1 and N2. And N2 is, if I want to give you this formula, N1 plus 1 is N2. What is the math language for this? The math language is A's age is 1 more than B's age. 1 more, 1 year more, or whatever it is, right? So in a math question, this is the structure defining element. Just like and was the structure defining element here. A's age is 1 more than B's age. This is N1. This is N2. And what helps you differentiate between N1 and N2 is the presence of the structural element of the statement. This statement will have to be written like this. Or I can say B's age is 1 less than A's age. Right? So whichever way. I can use both the structures to write this. Right? And from this language, you perceive this equation. So instead of this, in a DI question, this will be 25 words and this will be 25 words. Very often, especially in LOD2 questions, as you get more difficult questions, this will very often happen. So in that case, what will keep your sanity? What will keep you from getting lost? Because you are effectively dealing with a 55-word sentence to tell you this equation. And you have to be able to perceive what N1 is. What will keep your sanity? The understanding of this as a key structure and breaking the reading into this part and that part. So this is the skill you generate in traditional DI. So what you will do if you look at the book, after the 7 chapters, where I want you to go through the LOD1 and LOD2, the next part of the book is mocks, practice mocks. Right? And there are, if I remember correctly, there might be LOD1 and LOD2 mocks, around 25 plus, 25 to 28. My objective during this is a traditional DI. My objective for you is I want you to get to a point of around 100 to 150 question sets. I want you to get to a point of exposure to around 100 to 150 question sets. And when we talk about question exposure, you also use the DILR scale program. There's going to be a significant upgrade to that program also in terms of new sets, etc. that I'm recording. If you feel you need some sets whose solution you want to know as doubt clearing, you send it to me. It's a good set. I'll put it in. I'll record a solution and put it into the scale program. So I do that every year for students. So the idea is to get exposure to 100 to 150 question sets on self-problem solving mode. And from the DI part of this DILR scale course, get to do around, I mean, the formula is watch 25 to 50 For traditional DI, the formula is wash 25 to 50 and solve 100 to 150. So by this time, what will happen is everything will start repeating. You start getting repetitive. You start getting repetitive data representations. You'll start getting repetitive question language. You'll start getting repetitive formulas and relationships. Right? Because there's limited. I mean, if I'm talking about V1 and V2, I can only connect them with plus, minus, into, and divided. There's no fifth connection. So there's limited formula that you will come across between variables. Everything is going to be linear. You'll come across repetitive calculations. So by this time, you should get there. And if you look at your timeline for a 6-month framework, I would want you to target around 15 to 20 sets of DI every week. Now, one thing about target is this might sometimes be an ambitious target because you're also doing quants. तो नहीं हो रहा है तो टारगेट का बेसिक लॉजिक होता है कि टारगेट अचीवमेंट परसेंटेज भी रहता है साथ में. So if you have a 40% achievement of target, you at least the presence of a target make sure that you at least do 8 sets. 6 sets, 8 sets, 10 sets. चलेगा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. If you have a target कि you want to travel 100 kilometers in 1 hour and you only travel 60, does it mean you're not going to reach the destination? You will. See, you need to understand one more thing, that after you finish the first round of your quants prep in a 3 to 4 month framework, उसके बाद the work in quants drastically drops because you just then have to go back and review and revise and review and revise this thing. In the first 10, 15, 20 weeks of your preparation, every week a new chapter comes in. I have to study this chapter, I have to go through this LOD 1, 2. So, but at the 15, 20th week, in fact, after a 12 to 15 week period in quants, even if you're going 1 chapter per week, the work tapers off. You can then say, okay, you can put a foot off the accelerator. You can say, okay, I'm taking a break, I'm going to do a little bit more DI, etc. So, 8 set week, your target is 50 to 20, but you only did 8 sets last week, it's fine. Because there will be weeks in which you'll do 40 later. Right? So there can be weeks in which you'll do 40. So that's how you manage it. So the idea is that including both these mocks and this thing, keep a feel of when the repetition starts happening. You'll get that feel automatically. So the moment repetition starts happening, you're now matured enough to finish your traditional day. You can say that, okay, I've only done 10 sets, 10 tests. I've not done the LOD 1 test. I've done the LOD 2 tests only. 10, 12 tests I've done. I'm now ready to move to logical DI because I'm now seeing only repetitive stuff in traditional DI. So if you're able to, suppose you keep a target of this and you're able to maintain 12 sets per week, then this will take you, getting to this point will take you 10, maybe 10 weeks. Right? So 2 months approximately, just a little bit above 2 months is what, where you will be in this context. And then you move to the next challenge of logical DI. You shift your this thing, and logical DI, if you look at the book, currently there is, you have 3 areas in which you have logical DI. You've got level of difficulty 3. So you go back to the chapters and go to the LOD 3 questions after this. Then you go to the 12-minute tests. And then you've got LOD 2 and LOD 3 questions. LOD 2 mocks and LOD 3 mocks. And again, logical DI is about data analysis. Logical DI involves all this, plus it involves data analysis. It might go a little bit down on the calculation bit, but it involves all this, plus it involves data analysis. So heavy data analysis is required in logical DI questions. So when you head to the logical DI part, the idea is to do around 200 to 250 sets. And if you cover this, the LOD 3s, 12-minute tests, and this LOD 2 and LOD 3 mocks, I think there are around 26 to 28 of them with around 4 sets per mock. So LOD 3 you will get around 5-6 sets per set this thing. So this will be around 50. This 12-minute test, around 30 of them. Every test has one set. So you will have around 200 sets inside this. And of course, parallelly, you'll also do the mini cats and the mocks. Whenever you start the mocks, you'll get more sets inside them. So this is going to be your this thing. And again, by this time, your quants preparation will also be lower. So you will continue doing 15 to 20 sets per week. And when I say 15 to 20 sets per week, it is not necessary that it is not necessary that you'll be able to solve all of the sets. So just like in quants, I've mentioned that just like in quants, I've mentioned that whatever set you're not able to solve, you keep a time limit of how much time you want to use for solving it, for trying it. You keep a time limit for that. And after you finish that, and if you're not able to solve it still, then what you do is you move on to the next set. You continue going that way. You come to the in logical DI, come to the 200 point this thing, and the exposure of 200 questions, even if you're only able to solve 100 of them and 100 were not solved, the exposure of these 200 questions will help you come back to those sets and solve some of them again. And of course, you'll mix this with the assisted problem solving, which is there in the scale. So this part again should at 15 to 20 sets per week, and I'm assuming that you can do around you can average around 15 to 20 per week actually, or maybe higher because your quants preparation will be over by that time. So this again should take you around 10 weeks. So 10 weeks for this, 10 weeks for this approximately, and then you have to do the CAT papers. It's very important to know every set from CAT 99 to 2008 plus